Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Coach's Corner. I am Jeffrey David Hartford, your host and the coach. That's the conduit of optimism, altruism, consciousness, and health. And today I have with me a guest that I've been following for quite some time now, just consuming all of his content, and I really love what he brings to the table. And I'll tell you, without further ado, today's guest is Jones Hussain. He is the runner, if you will, of Excellent Health Podcast, and it's incredible. You have to check it out. So, Jones, welcome, my man.
Thank you, my friend.
Yes, sir. It's I'm thrilled for this. I'm really looking forward to it. I've been taking in some of your content for quite some time. I could do what the best justice I could have given you some kind of overview, but I'm going to throw to you. I'm going to say, who are you? What do you do? And what do you want to share with the audience in terms of who you are?
I mean, practically on the deepest level, I am. There's nothing there whatsoever, really. There's no self to begin with. But that's another story. In terms of what I do, I make people healthy. That's really what it revolves around. And so you might notice with my channel, I don't get stuck on certain belief systems. And that's what I tell people. You can't get stuck in certain belief systems. You have to pursue what is true. And what is true can be found in many places. And so I search everywhere. Anything that makes people healthier, that makes me healthier, I'm interested in that. And I share it on the internet. I've been doing that since 2020. And before that, of course, I mean, any person I met, the topic of conversation always gravitated toward health. And so I always had the idea of starting a channel. And so I started it, and here we are.
I love it. I'm grateful you did, man, as many of your followers are, I'm sure. And, it's what I love about this space is, as you said, you make people healthy. And really what you do is you provide information that they get to make a choice to apply or not apply. And when they apply it, they get healthier. It's such a beautiful thing. And really what we're doing in this space is we begin by empowering ourselves. We ask questions. We're seeking to understand things better. And then we apply it and we see what works, we see what doesn't work, and we share it, and we then empower each other. And that's exactly what you've been doing. I follow your own personal journey of going through, being a young guy and not developing the way that you wanted to, and having acne, and trying what you thought was right, going down the path of veganism and all that type of stuff. So if you don't mind, you give us a little more detail into that, share with my audience your little journey there, and really what brought you to this thorough understanding you've got of what makes us healthy.
What brought me here is health problems. If you look at it, most people who are interested in health, the degree to which they are, let's say, knowledgeable is the degree to which they were sick. Usually that's the case, unless we have some kind of exception where someone just is interested in that topic for whatever reason. I mean, Jack Cruz is a perfect example. He, of course, if you look at his story as well, he was obese, and he had other health problems, I believe. And then that led him down the path of doing a bunch of research. But then again, he's very, very curious, so he has that aspect to him. And so for me, again, the veganism was really a blessing, because without trying that out, I would have never known the extent to which it can damage you, at least the extent to which it could damage me. And so then I had to reverse all this, because again, I was in a state that I didn't like. And so I had to figure out what to do to get rid of these problems. And so during that time, I had to do research and then apply the research, and now I have experience. And the thing with me more specifically is that I'm very grateful for is in terms of the journey. Of course, if you have yourself, sure, you know how to treat your own problems if you succeed in treating your own problems. But I've gotten to speak to a lot of people, trying to help them, clients, people in my community, etc., people in the comments as well. And that gives me experience with other people as well. But going back to your question, so veganism, then I stumble upon a guy called Argenis Wonderplanets, or actually Frank Tufano. Frank Tufano convinces me that, okay, I need to eat animal foods, because again, I mean, it was especially important at the 59th latitude, Jesus Christ, because we have no light, so you need to eat the most electron-dense food up there. That needs to be the case. So I eat more animal foods, of course, that's gonna help. But my problems don't go away, really. And then in November 2019, I stumble upon a guy called Autogenous Wonder Planets, and I get into raw animal-based diets. And so I do that, and I improve. Now, what's funny that I haven't told anyone is that during 2020, let's say in February, March, something like that, I stumble upon a cruise interview. No, actually, it's a cruise talk. It's the 2016 Vermont talk. So I listened to that, and of course, I don't understand anything, but I did understand that the sun is important and that blue light is bad. So what I do is in my room, I switch out the lights to red. That's one. And two, I sunbathe a lot. Now, what I was doing even before that summer was a ton of cold exposure. Not only that, I was doing breath holds, lots of breath holds and reduced breathing. And I was also not eating that much dairy, and I was eating more seafood as well. And if you look at how I look during that period, you'll see, yeah, I look pretty good. I had no problems, really. Everything went away. And then I stumble upon ideas. These ideas are that seafood is bad or toxic. That's one. Two, cold exposure is bad. And then three, that food is the most important thing. And I sort of forget about the electromagnetic spectrum in general. I know that sun is good, sure, but I don't really... I'm not fanatic about the light stuff, let's say. And so year after year goes by, and I develop an issue in 2022. I didn't know that I was dehydrated, by the way, during this time, but I was. And my heart rate got higher. And so I actually have a client with this very same issue, and I'm very happy that he found me, because this is exactly what I've dealt with. And what happens is that you have a higher resting heart rate throughout the day, and then when you're going to bed, it goes even higher, and you feel these every minute or so. You feel these chest contractions, and it feels like you're gonna have a heart attack. Something bad is happening with your heart, but it's not. It doesn't seem to be fatal. It seems to be just muscle contractions because something bad is happening with your circulation. In any case, so this continues on 2023, the beginning of 2024 as well, until I find Jack stuff, and I find that the more I implement it, the better I get. And so I remove dairy, I drink more water, I add in cold exposure, and voila, it sort of mostly goes away. But then again, there was a massive redox problem, you could say, as well, even though I had fixed the dehydration and a melanin deficiency, definitely. So I actually go on a trip to Central America from, well, the end of March to the end of April, so a month. And voila, my problem goes away completely. And now I'm back, man, it's mostly fine. And now I'm doing everything I'm doing in 2020 because I realized, oh yeah, that's what I'm supposed to do. But I'm doing it even better, of course. So that's basically my journey.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And you really are taking some of these concepts that I've pieced together in my own life. Like, we often hear people tout themselves as experts because they have a whole bunch of semantic knowledge, that they've been told something or they've read something and they believe they've studied it thoroughly enough that they get it and they're the experts, but they really lack a lot of the experiential side. And when we start to look at people who, maybe tradesmen is a great example, they may not have studied a whole lot, they might not have a ton of the semantic knowledge, but all they've done is done the job since they were a boy as an apprentice, and they've got 40 years experience on the job. And boy, that to me is a level of expertise that you almost can never touch if it's just semantic knowledge. But you've blended the two together. And that's what I'm trying to do. The more I can listen to brilliant people such as yourself, absorb that information, read the content, and really absorb that level of the semantic side, but then more importantly, apply it. Live it, practice it, see what works, see what doesn't, and then go back and try to study that material again. It's this bridging that gap between the two and blending them together that I really believe you've done so well. You take Jack's work, and the average person listening to Jack is like, what the hell is he saying? I don't understand this. It's over my head. You listen to it, you interpret it, you share it with people. I try to do the same thing. Alexis Cowan's done a phenomenal job of that as well. Taking some of Jack's work and kind of bringing it down into some layman's terms. So that's really what I believe you've done in such a wonderful way. And I'm hoping we can really share that with the audience today. So if we take that description, which I really thank you for, of your personal journey and now pull in some of the data, quantum biology, light water magnetism, that's what we hear. What does that, just a line, light water magnetism on the surface, what does that mean to you, and how do you explain that to the people you work with?
It is the very basis of life on this planet. Those are the conditions in which we came from. And any change in those is going to be a huge problem, health-wise. Oh God, I don't know where that sound is coming from. Oh, now it's gone.
Oh, you can hear that? Yeah, it just kicked on. That's the air in my room. My office has the AC is connected to the larger building, and it just kicks it. I have a vent in here. I try to keep that off, but it kicks on periodically.
I
Sorry
thought
for the
it was
distraction.
just some problem with my microphone or something like that.
No.
Okay, so it's again the basis of life on this planet, and so any health issue, and again all these three things, you'll find them in the body. Everything that's happening in the body can be explained through these three things. The way I view it is that, well, I can't say that I know too much about magnetism. I know it interacts with water and with many particles. Well, practically anything that's magnetic in the body, which is a lot of things. One of them being oxygen, for example. Water is the battery and light charges the battery. And also, it is the medium in which information is conveyed. Actually, I'd say magnetism does that as well. So light and magnetism, they convey information, but they also provide energy. So when any one of these goes wrong, you have an issue. So for example, we know of 5G studies. You have a cell tower outside your, let's say, apartment, and you start getting headaches and your dog is randomly shitting itself. Actually, that example is actually from a Swedish study where they actually observed this in the dog. And when they went to another apartment, the dog stopped having this issue. And so what is that? What is RF? It's in the electromagnetic spectrum. And when we say light, we mean the electromagnetic spectrum. And of course, humans aren't supposed to be exposed to RF. And when you look at the light part of the electromagnetic spectrum, what comes from the sun and the moon and the stars, I guess, is what we're supposed to be exposed to. Nature didn't plan for us being exposed to RF. So then now you messed up something in terms of the light, and so you have this issue. Well, same thing with the water. If you consume something with, well, let's say you're in Sweden and you consume pineapples with very high deuterium levels. Well, now you're going to have more deuterium in your body. That's going to be probably in the water component. And so then you're going to get mitochondrial dysfunction because you're not supposed to have that much deuterium in the mitochondria, for example. And then in terms of magnetism, I mean, well, let's say your apartment is on the 20th floor of some high-rise building. Then you're far away from the surface of the earth. So that's also going to be a huge problem. And I believe Jack has said that the higher you go, the worse your brain can detect what's happening in your environment. Or at least, in terms of, yeah, exactly. Because the magnetic field is less strong during the day and it's stronger during the night. And that's because of the sun. And so this change, again, it's a day-night cycle. And so we use it to our advantage, circadian-wise. So if you live up there, you won't have that signal. It won't be as strong, and so your sleep will suffer, for example. So there you have an example of all those three. And again, any type of health problem, any type of intervention, anything bad that's going on in your environment will be related to these three. That's really how I view them.
I love it. I love it. It really gives a good, thorough understanding with some specific examples for people to understand. And the further I study it and the more I connect it to the human physiology, I really think about it in terms specifically with the electron transport chain as well, and how each component kind of impacts that, and how, we've been led to believe that the whole concept of the electron transport chain is simply to get to the point of making ATP. That is the only energy source of the body, and almost as if to say that the water created there is just an afterthought, that's a byproduct of it, and ATP is all we care about. So through that lens, if I can set you up with that, can you see those connections I'm talking about? That light water magnetism through the lens of the electron transport chain, how the light impacts the mitochondria to be making that water. Can you dig a little deeper into that for me?
Oh yeah, I mean, if we view the mitochondria, well, it's emitting light, that's one. It's emitting it, well, through the water, but also into the water. So it's, for example, let's say you do cold exposure, you're going to create more heat in the form of infrared, and that infrared is going to gets stored in the water. And if you look at Gerald Pollack's work, you need, well, the peak absorption of EZ, well, the water that creates the most amount of EZ is at, I believe it's 3,000 nanometers, something like that, 3,100 nanometers. And so you emit that, you create more EZ, that means more electrons, that means better. Again, you look at the grounding research, picking up from free electrons from the ground, it lowers your cortisol, improves sleep drastically, just increases energy levels, focus, just a bunch of things. You're doing the same thing, exact same thing with the water in your cells. And also, I mean, again, I said water is the battery. This is how you charge the battery. And again, sunlight does the same thing. So your mitochondria and the sun sort of do the same thing. But so that's one. And then you've got the magnetism, which is the ATP synthase spinning. So it's creating a magnetic field, and that's how oxygen knows where to go. That's how it knows to go to the fourth complex to create the water in the first place. So there you have the magnetism. And then you also have the free radicals, which are also magnetic. I don't fully know how they're interacting, magnetically speaking, but I do know that they're paramagnetic as well, and their recombination creates UV light, which is very cool. That's how we emit UV light. So that's another part of the story. Those two are magnetic, I guess. And they're direct consequences of the electron transport chain. Let's see, light, magnet. Yeah, those are all three.
Yeah,
What did I think
absolutely.
about?
No, that's fantastic. I love it. And you know, where you went with that and you instantly go to the cold, and I'm with you. I mean, I have my Morosco. I'm in there every morning. I've got it set to 34 degrees. I do it for 3 minutes and really just giving my body that cold exposure. And we can get into a little bit of the detail in a moment as to why I specifically am doing that, the benefits I'm looking for. But where my mind goes with that is, and I've been talking with a lot of clients about this recently as well, I like to pull this thorough understanding of the science into almost a geopolitical thing, even. And we see the use of our skin color as this divide for us, which couldn't be more asinine when you consider that it's just a matter of where we're from, where our ancestors are from, and how much melanin we have, how many melanocytes we've got. And when you talk about the cold exposure, it makes me think of heteroplasmy and who is going to benefit more from the cold exposure, who can tolerate it better versus who just needs more of the sun. Now, technically, I understand we can all benefit from the cold exposure, but some of us can do it much more easily based on that heteroplasmy and such. So if you want to unpack some of that and I'll get your take on.
Yeah, I mean, the more melanin you have on your surface, the more you need sun. It's really the case. That's what nature is telling you. And the more you have it inside, the more you can utilize cold. Because if you have it on the inside and your mitochondria are emitting light, well, then you have more melanin on the inside to utilize that. Because melanin uses light and water to create energy. So again, if it's on the inside and your mitochondria are emitting the light, then of course cold exposure is going to be superior. And people think that, okay, we look at a person and they're either tan or they're dark or they're not. Everyone has a bunch of melanin on the inside. There's this place in the brain called the substantia nigra, which is fully melanated. It's fully dark. You open up the brain, it's very, very dark. And I learned that from Jack Cruz, of course. Credit to him. And so what's happening with that melanin, the reason why I believe it's there are probably many reasons, but melanin turns into L-DOPA and L-DOPA turns into dopamine. So actually, then if you look at the, stimulatory effects that movies have, social media, well, let's say erotic material as well, that young men are suffering from, they're actually degrading that place in the brain. They're actually taking all the melanin in the brain, which is absolutely needed for energy creation, and they're destroying that. And so they get a bunch of brain problems. They just feel bad in general, increase the risk of mental illness, etc. So that's something to think about. This brings the melanin being on the inside story. It makes it more clear, I guess. So that's one. And then again, the closer you go to the equator, especially in Africa, the darker people will be. You've also got that with the Aboriginal Australians. Again, I think the most relevant thing here, because it's very easy, really. If you're at a higher latitude and you're ancestrally from there, let's say, yeah, you have to do cold exposure when it's cold. You can also do it during the summer, but it's absolutely obligatory during the winter, because during the summer you can use the sun. And again, if you're dark, you need to be somewhere where there's a lot of sun. And this is what I was referring to when I was saying that most people already know about this, but the problem in modern society is that you have people who are, let's say, darker at higher latitudes. That's really the biggest problem. Like me, my father is a bit darker than me. My mother is light. I'm like my mother. My sister, again, a little bit darker. So we have two people who are lighter, two people who have darker in the family, or are darker in the family. And so I always tell my father, you're someone from the Middle East and Sweden. You can't afford to be doing this or that, etc. He has keratoconus. He got diagnosed with keratoconus, I think 1.5 years ago, something like that. And that was the pathway that led me into convincing him about blue blockers and what he needs and the sun and how to heal this issue. So now I was sitting outside in the front yard and he opened the door and he came there and stood in the sun. I told him, yeah, now your keratoconus is getting better. And he did that because I had told him that you need to get some sun in your eyes before you eat. You need to tell your body that it's daytime, get some higher cortisol before you eat. But now, I mean, let me go back to the cold exposure. I think, again, yeah, that's mainly it. I mean, again, the way people should think about it is, look at a bird. A bird usually has more melanin on the back as opposed to the front. Now, why is that? I said earlier that melanin takes light and water and creates energy. So, of course, it's going to have it on the back where the sun is shining. And so, again, you look at a dark person, they have melanin on the surface. They're supposed to get external light, while someone who is lighter, they need more internal light. That's the way to think about it, really. Wherever melanin is, there is energy being harvested from the environment. Whether it's a rhinoceros, a turtle, a tree with its lignin, for example, everything in nature, usually, or many things in nature, have melanin, and wherever you see it, life is extracting energy from its environment.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Absolutely right. And, I guess if we take that to the next level of practical application for people, and as you alluded to, if you've got people whose ancestors are from closer to the equator and they're living further away, and I'm in the 43rd latitude, so we've got people here at the 43rd latitude whose ancestors are from the 20th latitude. Well, they're not getting enough UV, especially 6 months out of the year. So those people, short of what Jack would tell them is simply move where you need to move to, most people aren't going to make that decision. Most people can't financially make that decision. What do we want to tell them they need to make sure they're doing to leverage as much as possible to stay as healthy as possible?
Well, first of all, those who cannot orient their life around what they're supposed to do will suffer the consequences. And so that is the first thing they must accept. The second thing is to actually help them. I mean, I would get a UV lamp. A UV lamp, a spurty lamp, and then also some kind of red light therapy device, and use that every day. That's what I do. That's really the only solution. And then if someone feels better doing cold exposure, even if they're a bit darker, maybe they should do a bit of that, perhaps. I'd say that if you're born and raised at a higher latitude, even if your genes aren't, let's say, made for that place, I think especially if you've been outside a fair amount, not too much inside, unfortunately that's not the case in modern society, your mitochondria will sort of sing to the tune in that environment, more so than if you were to be born in the tropics, perhaps. So yeah, they should try cold exposure, that's one, and just get a UV lamp. A UV lamp and some red light. They need to get the light somehow. And lastly, if they're not going to move, whenever they can, don't take a vacation up to Nunavut to look at polar bears. Go down to Central America, the top of South America, and get some sunlight. Go closer to the equator.
Excellent. Yeah, it's so important. I mean, even back to what we talked about before, when you think about it through the lens of technology, all of these non-native EMFs we're exposed to, and you touched upon not realizing you were dehydrated, but we all live indoors in this soup of non-native EMFs that is dehydrating our tissues, that is preventing the mitochondria from making this exclusion zone water. If all we can do is just get that brought into our conscious awareness and just get outside as much as possible, go connect with the natural electromagnetic frequency of the Schumann resonance. And, I know Jack often talks, and I love how every time you share information and it's not your own original thought, you're giving credit to whomever it's coming from. I love that in this space. I love that you're doing it all the time as well. That's really valuable in my opinion.
Well, the
You
reason
know, that
I must
yeah,
interrupt you, because the
yeah,
reason I do that is because, first of all, it isn't my idea, and honesty is a very important trait. It's one of the most important things in terms of the way I interact with others. So that's one. And then if they know who the information comes from, what I wish that people do, or for people to do, is they look up Jack Cruz. When I say, "Oh, this was Jack Cruz," that taught me this. Look up Jack Cruz. If I say it's Buteyko, look up Buteyko. If I say Gerald Pollack, look up Gerald Pollack. Watch the interviews I've done with these people. Although Buteyko isn't alive anymore, so I can't do an interview with him. But Arturo Rakhimov, for example, that's someone. Again, there are many people out there, of course, but that's why I mention these people. One, honesty, and two, so that other people can learn.
yes, sir. I can relate wholeheartedly. And interestingly, my catalyst, if you will, to starting the podcast came in from a meditation. It was through a message. The title of my podcast being an acronym for coach, the C at the beginning of that was what gave me permission. I'm just a conduit. I'm not out here trying to reinvent the wheel and trying to make it all about me. And it's only going to be my original thought, and I'm the person to listen to. I'm conveying information that I've learned from other people. So I'm 100% with you. You know, as I read it, as I learn it, as I hear it, as I speak with people, it's vital to be able to cite that and give credit where credit is due. And then, you know, connect some dots and interpret it my own way and share it maybe the way that it makes sense to me. But no, I appreciate that explanation as well. But I think it's important that I express to you that I appreciate that approach. I think for the most part in this space, this kind of paradigm shift, if you will, of I've said for a while, we're going from what I've called the disempowerment paradigm, where we have our power stripped from us through fear and anxiety and low vibrational frequencies. People profit off of scaring the shit out of us and then telling us, oh, but don't worry, I have the answer. Come on over. I have this thing to sell you. And we now are ushering in this paradigm shift into the empowerment paradigm. We are really giving these tools, thankfully, to the technology. Even though there's a dark side of technology, it can harm your physiology. We're able to utilize it the way we are right now to share such valuable information that empowers people to say, okay, whoa, I had no clue about any of this. And I can actually take back charge of my health today with the information that Jones is sharing with me. That's the reason that I do what I do and have these conversations. So I'm with you. It's vital to give that credit. So, segue from there. That was an interesting little sidebar I didn't anticipate. But let's think. This is going to be a little bit of a hard segue, I guess, because this is something I do not want to forget to talk about. You did already bring up the raw animal-based diet, and I see so much value in that. I've followed quite a few different people who are doing it, but I've had a conversation with a few people recently that for somebody such as myself, and coincidentally, the people I spoke to, they come to find out they as well, products of the current medical system who have had their appendix taken out. Can people that have had their appendix removed safely follow a raw animal-based diet?
Based on what I read in the Brain Gut blog series, and again, I searched for about this specific issue. I wanted to know what the appendix does. And I believe Jack says that it's sort of a store for the microbiome. So if anything were to happen, your bacteria get wiped out for some reason, you have sort of a copy in there of the bacterial species that usually populate the gut that can be used. So you could say that it's a bacterial memory. You could almost say that. Based on the function of the appendix, if we assume that that's the main thing, I don't see any problem at all. I mean, because it's not, it doesn't become a relevant factor really. And then again, the guy Argenis of Under Planets, supposedly his appendix was removed, and he also had a impaired vagus nerve. And I believe that has something to do with stomach acid production. And doctors told him he could never eat raw food. He did so for I believe 40 years without any issues. So I don't think there are any contraindications.
That's fantastic. So that I have a couple of different thoughts on that. The first one is I listened to your video, one of your videos where you spoke on Augenis and talked about what led him to initially eat that raw animal product was he just got to a point where he said, okay, I don't want to live anymore. If they're telling me this is going to kill me, then let me just go eat a whole bunch of it. And he was living out in nature. And little did he know he was giving his body every input it needed to be optimal and heal from everything he was being told was going to kill him. And that's just remarkable to me hearing that story. And the concept of the appendix, I love that explanation. And it makes me think about some of the work of Dr. Sabine Hazen and going through the microbiome and such, and listening to Jack, how the sun on our abdomen plays a massive role in our microbiome diversity, far more than your food and taking certain probiotics and such. So if we can follow this principle of just continue to connect with nature more, leverage it as much as possible, the cold when appropriate, but that sun, I mean, finding this healthy connection back to nature and to the sun and being up early enough to see daybreak and sunrise and UVA rise, UVB rise, midday sun, sunset, nightfall, and so on. I mean, each of those phases is giving the body input that we need to make sure that the naked eye is seeing, the skin is seeing, get those photoreceptors picking that up. So that really has me excited to think about that, just focusing on staying connected to the circadian rhythm, making sure that the microbiome is as diverse as it can from those things, we can safely then eat these animal-based raw products and really reap those rewards. That being the groundwork, what have been the rewards of that you've seen personally, you've seen with your clients?
I mean, here's the funny part. Usually, my clients already eat animal foods, but they have problems, and that's because they're missing the light.
Interesting.
Yeah, their circadian rhythms are completely off. They have no idea.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, here's the thing. Not only does your cells not only are they controlled by the circadian clock, the bacteria also run on a circadian clock. And their clock runs on, what you're exposed to in your environment, because they react to the light. Oh, the light goes away, probably less active. More light, probably more active, etc. So that's just something to think about. The microbiome working is completely dependent on the light that's hitting your body, the light in your environment.
Yeah.
So that's one. And then, I mean, for me, I actually said something very interesting in the community when someone made a post about sort of this issue of cooked meat and raw meat. And it was that the difference isn't actually that big, but only for primitive people. But for modern people who are very malnourished, there is a big difference. Because when you have weak digestion, the difference is going to be huge. And for anyone who doesn't know, usually when people try raw animal foods, instead of the meat sitting in your stomach like it might do with cooked meat, it's usually easier to digest. It's also more nutritious. It also has more easy water. That's another thing. And then fat becomes easier to digest as well. That's one of the biggest things. It doesn't cause this nausea. And that means that you can eat more of the most deuterium depleted foods.
Yeah.
Right? And also, what does oxygen do? Or what is cooking? If you're putting a steak on a pan, you're making it react with oxygen. Oxygen is stripping away electrons from the food. So if you eat it raw, you get more electrons. Now, what does Jack say is, how does he explain disease in many cases at least? Too many protons or not enough electrons. That's the way he does it. And so, okay, if you can get more electrons from your food, that's probably a good idea. Now, is it the biggest electron source? Absolutely not. The water is the biggest electron source, and what affects the water is the light and magnetism in your environment. But hey, is there light and magnetism in the food as well as water? Yes, there is. So basically, for me, cooking would not only, let's say, saves me time, it also saves time from it adds life to my longevity. So if you imagine life as a candle, it burns the candle less to not cook it. So that's
I love it.
Something I would say. And again, the explanations are all quantum biological. So again, at this, okay, so just to fully answer your question or practically answer your question, I'd say better digestion, a lot of time saved. I get better response from the food. If you don't season it, if you don't cook it, you really know what's going into you. You really know how much you need, and when to stop, basically, when to eat, etc. And you start becoming more sensitive to what you're actually eating. Because if you have meat from several sources, seafood from several sources, you start being able to compare, you start being able to understand, okay, this is superior to that. But again, that's sort of the information you gain, not necessarily the health stuff. But the health stuff would be, again, you get more electrons, and so better redox, just healthier in general. You get more nutrients for less energy.
That makes so much sense. I mean, I felt the same exact thing when I transitioned from, I guess, I never truly followed a standard American diet, but pretty darn close to it in my youth. And I've always been an athlete and tried to be a little more mindful, but it wasn't good for a long stretch of time. And each step along the way, you learn a little bit better, you do a little bit better, you feel a little bit better. And, transitioning between trying different things, be it paleo, keto, carnivore, and certainly incorporating fasting, each step along the way for me, I felt a very similar experience to what you just described. And when you think about it in terms of changing when you're eating as well, you talked about using the candle analogy there, and you're getting more life back essentially. You're now digesting less timeline. It doesn't take as long to digest it. And yeah, I mean, a lot of that explanation just makes total sense to me from that first principles thinking concept that I understand the average person is going to really push back against it. They've been programmed to believe that they need to cook it to kill the bacteria. And maybe there's some reality to that if the sourcing is horrible, if they're coming from these CAFO feedlots and that's stuff that, cooked or not, I don't want to be putting into my body. But if we're eating it from a regeneratively sourced farm and they're being raised properly and they have no diseases themselves, they are in sync with the circadian rhythm and they're eating what they're supposed to be. We talk about this local, seasonal, whole food diet for us. Well, that's exactly what the animals are getting. And that provides the best quality source of nutrients for our body when we eat it that way. Everything about that just resonates with me and makes sense. Dig. Now, unfortunately, as I said to you before we hit record, I noticed the battery life on my device was pretty darn low, and I have already gotten the warning that it's running lower. So I'm going to try for a moment unplugging my headset, plugging the device in, and seeing if you can hear me. I know you said you couldn't hear me at the beginning, so we'll roll the dice and go that route. And if it doesn't work, then I guess we'll have to call this the end of part one and maybe record part two in the not so distant future. So let's give this a test real quick. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, excellent. We'll keep it going then. Brilliant. So, all right, I like that transition. I like that answer regarding the appendix. I think that's going to bring quite a few of my clients that I've had these conversations with some exciting news, and they can start the transition. So let's talk about, for those that do decide they want to try it, where do they want to begin? I just talked about the quality of the sourcing of the food. That's clearly got to play a role. But from your personal experience, you've done this now. I have not. How slowly do they want to start, or can they dive right in? How do you coach somebody to start going the raw animal base?
Well, I must say again, have I actually done that? Yes, I have. I have. There are a few people who were interested in that, but I must say, I only talk about this when someone asks me. During my consultations, I usually talk about other things because that's usually where the problem lies. But we'll begin with the things that are usually eaten raw. So oysters. That would be the best start. Again, seafood is just superior in every single way to land-based food. So just, and again, we do need both according to Dr. or Professor Michael Crawford. But yes, seafood is what we're lacking usually. So seafood is what I'd begin with, and yeah, maybe there's sashimi that someone's selling. Maybe there's some sushi restaurant. Ask for sashimi, eat that. That's raw meat. Go ahead with that. Oysters, eat some oysters. That's raw. And then if you want to transition into beef, get a nice cut of beef that isn't too tough. And then just to calm your mind, perhaps, get some onions, get some garlic, they're antibacterial, and cut them up and then mix them or just rub that on the piece of meat or use ground beef, whatever you want to do, really. You eat that, or you cut up the steak, actually, and then it becomes easier to let's say, make steak tartare, for example. And then you make the steak tartare, you eat that. Okay, nothing happened to me. Okay, let's move on to the next thing. Or maybe you do that a few times and then you remove sort of more ingredients because you'll naturally realize that you don't really need them. The main thing is the meat. So then you're eating steak, but you're still afraid of the ground beef. Okay, so you go over to the ground beef and you repeat the same thing. Oh, I'm scared of the ground beef. Oh, let me kill all the bacteria. Garlic, onion, spices if you want to, just everything that kills bacteria. Okay, now everything's fine. Now I'm not scared anymore. But I'm a little bit scared. Let me eat it. I feel I'm not too scared to not eat it. So let's eat it. Bam. You ate it. Nothing happened. Okay, let's remove more spices over the course of a few weeks. Okay, now I'm just eating ground beef without any spices. No onions, no garlic. Okay, so that was fine. Let me go with some more fish. Let me do some mackerel. Let me fillet a mackerel at home. Okay, now I'm sort of familiar with. I've eaten sashimi, but I've never done it before. At home. I've eaten raw beef in the ground form and the steak form. Okay, let's do this. Okay, I ate it. No problems. Let me move on to the next thing. And the next thing would be, well, usually pork and chicken. So in all these examples, it turned out that the establishment was wrong. It didn't do anything to me. So, or actually, you could begin with raw milk if you want to. But again, I'd be very careful with dairy because it causes so many issues for so many people. The best bet with dairy is just to not try it. So let's focus on the flesh-based food. So let's see here. Yeah, so you do pork or chicken, and then you'd want one that's pastured. So healthy chickens, healthy pork. You try that again with the spices, etc. And then once you're comfortable with that, you sort of remove the garlic, the onions, and the spices, and now you're eating that without any problems. And I mean, just for me, this is funny. Most of the raw animal foods I've eaten come from Sweden, of course. That's where I'm based. Now, I went to Georgia. This is the first time I actually say this on the internet. My members know, but not people on YouTube. So I went to Georgia, and all I ate was meat, nothing else. I just ate meat, and some of that was, let's say, the animals that people consider dangerous, and I didn't even hesitate. And it was usually one meal a day, etc. Nothing happened. I've done that in Costa Rica as well. I've done that in the Netherlands. I've done that in El Salvador. Nothing ever happened. And again, in Georgia, in Sweden, you have this. If you have a butcher store, of course, if you fail an inspection, they put you in prison. So you have to probably, or you get really fined. So hygiene standards in the Western world really high. In Georgia, the goddamn butcher has big hunks of meat hanging in the back. And you tell him, oh, I want some of that. He cuts you a piece with a big, like a machete-like thingy. Then he puts the meat on a big log. He gets an axe and he cuts it up with this axe. Okay, and there are no hygiene standards. Okay, they don't care about that stuff. They're men over there. Not like in any case. So I had no problems whatsoever eating that.
Wow.
Nothing whatsoever. And again, El Salvador, Costa Rica, no problems whatsoever. So I mean,
wow,
nothing. And again, I've done most things you can imagine.
That's incredible. And there's definitely quite a few different influencers, if you will, throughout social media, Instagram. I don't know any of the names off the top of my head, but I've seen plenty of channels where they're just showing their meal for the day and it's all raw meat and they're scarfing it down on camera and they tell the same story and they're showing pictures of themselves developing and their skin clears up and they feel better. And I mean, they get a more defined jawline, which we understand through the works of like James Nestor in the book Breathe. He talks about that the food that we're currently eating, especially in the States here, standard American diet, it's so ultra processed, so soft, it takes very little chewing. So you think about some of these foods, if you're eating a raw steak, sure, cut it up a little bit smaller, but you're gonna have to chew more. You're working at that, and that's gonna change your structure of your jaw. And then to your point from earlier, you're getting the nutrients that you otherwise weren't getting. So everything's being kind of rebuilt more and healthier. And there's just so much to this that I'm thrilled to have this conversation. I've definitely dabbled. I've had my oysters. I've had sashimi. Those are staples of mine, actually. And because I've found a farm locally that I get regeneratively raised beef, I've certainly had, mouthfuls of ground beef. As I'm cooking the rest of it, I'll at least have a little bit and test it. And it tastes delicious, but I haven't gone to the point of that being my full meal yet. certainly not to the extent of, a full steak, or I have not touched the pork or chicken or that type of stuff. But yeah, after our conversation, it'll be happening. I'll work my way into that, and I'll be sure to let you know how it all goes. In
Let me
fact,
just say, that it's like all of
yeah,
this raw stuff, unlocking the whole thing. It's not necessarily something that's important. I'll say this. The only thing that's a bit important to eat raw is seafood. Why? Because you preserve more DHA. DHA is very easily peroxidized, but saturated fat isn't. So if you want to cook your meat, I don't really like, as long as your light environment is extremely good, I don't care. I really don't care. Make sure your choices around light water magnetism are good. You're not eating pineapples in the UK. Okay, sure, fine. And then again, seafood, as long as you're getting some raw seafood. Here's the thing. The reason I buy seafood is really for the selenium, the manganese, the iodine, but especially the DHA. So I see it as, okay, I'm paying per unit of DHA. Well, if I'm cooking it, I'm losing money. So that's the way I see it, really. And then based on what Professor Michael Crawford has told me, because I did an interview with him a few days ago, 2 days ago, I think. He told me that, yeah, we've actually eaten raw seafood. That was what we ate. We didn't cook our seafood. We ate it raw. So,
awesome.
Evolutionarily speaking, yeah, seafood has been eaten raw, and it should be eaten raw by humans. So that's obviously not going to cause any issues for us. Then I'm going to say something interesting that you may not have stumbled upon. There's a podcast that Joe Cohen did with Uncle Jack. And that's a really good podcast. That's one of the best that he's ever done, in my opinion, because it's just so packed with information. Because Joe Cohen, he wants the information. He's really curious. So he just asked Jack a bunch of questions that we wanted to. Well, the answers were really interesting. Let's just say that. Joe Cohen was saying, oh, well, if you cook the seafood, don't you lose DHA, etc.? And Jack told him, who told you I cooked the seafood? I never told you that. So I assume, based on that in the beginning, when Jack was doing, his the leptin reset, he didn't cook his seafood.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What I love about that too, that just that synopsis you just gave us there, that stays very consistent with Jack's messaging. You're saying the food part plays a role, and if you're going to focus on the food, when you focus on the food, yeah, try to go raw where you can, when you can, but that stuff doesn't matter all that much if you're not abiding by the principles of light water magnetism and really getting the best relationship with the light and all those things. Jack has said so many times, he's been on Sowing Prosperity with Logan Duvall a handful of times, and he pretty much told him, you're barking up the wrong tree. The food is not the problem. On the list of 8 to 10, top 8 to 10 things, food is 8, 9, or 10. I know Jack loves to be pretty inflammatory with those things, but it's very true. If you aren't abiding by the other principles, the food isn't going to move the needle for you. But to your point, when you're doing those other things and you can make some of these other changes with the food, there's some changes to be had there. And my personal approach is simply, if I'm going to even talk about this topic on the channel here and, hint towards people maybe wanting to do it, I just hold myself to it. I'm going to do it as well and see how I respond, and then let people know my experience with it. But I'm with you there. The consistent messaging is light water magnetism first and foremost. Get that stuff where it needs to be.
Well, food.
You look like you had something to say. Go ahead.
Well, yeah. Well, yes, certainly. And again, what you said in the beginning was that, yeah, it's sort of, this was what I said was reminiscent of what Jack says. And that's because, I had my first podcast with him, and of course I was talking about food. I was still under the impression that food was somehow this, let's say, very important part. It does have an effect. But once you realize that it's just a small part of light water magnetism, you go, oh, okay, yeah, okay, I realize my mistake. So the reason why I said that is because Jack is right. Jack is completely right. And I didn't just do that because I'm a Jack Cruz fan, or I'm not saying this because I'm a Jack Cruz fanboy or anything like that. No. That interview happened, and for the months after that, I did a bunch of research. And the more I did research, the more I wanted to do more research. Why? Because this stuff was fascinating. And then just to make people understand why you need to focus on the other stuff and why nutrition comes afterward, after all these things, is all the food ends up in the mitochondria. Okay? So, if we imagine a car here, if you have a dead engine, a really bad engine, if the fuel is super clean and nice and it's the best fuel in the world, does that matter? No. You need to make sure that the engine is good. It needs to be good. The windows need to be good. The skeleton of the car needs to be good. You have to have good brakes, etc. The electrical system, the battery, all that needs to work. And so, what is it that affects the mitochondria? Well, light, water, magnetism. Those things, your choices around those three. The circadian clock completely controls, again, the light that's coming in through your eyes completely controls the light that the mitochondria are emitting. Do you think that has a role in how the food is processed? 100%. I mean, Jack always likes to say that you can't burn fat without seeing the sunrise. And the study he cites, I've looked at it, and it's that the enzymes that turn fat, triglycerides, into ketones in the liver, those are circadian dependent. So if your circadian rhythm is off, if you didn't see the sunrise, you will not activate the clock genes that turn on those enzymes that will produce the ketones. And so the light comes first. The light, food is completely submissive to the dominant light. The light is the force, okay? Completely controls what the mitochondria do. And whatever the mitochondria are doing, that is what the food is at the mercy of. And that's why light is more important than food. Not that food isn't important. I believe it's important, but it's not the most important thing at all.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's interesting, of course, when I first heard Jack talk about that too, I've listened to him for so long now, and right from the get-go, I knew, okay, this guy clearly knows what he's talking about. He's a brilliant guy. He recalls things on a level that I don't think I've seen anybody else be able to do. He can bounce from topic to topic, and he's not looking at notes. So there's just something about his delivery that really resonated with me. But for sure, similar to you, when I first heard him talk, I still really thought food was so much more important, which, yeah, it plays a role. It is important. But without the other inputs, the food doesn't matter as much. I love what you just said. You know, if the engine's not working well and you're putting in great gas, it ultimately doesn't matter. So I think I listened to one of your videos and you talked to, I'll paraphrase it, but ultimately you need to understand what it is you're doing and then determine what you need to remove, what you need to add in, changes that you need to make ultimately. So that topic, I mean, maybe take what you just said about what Jack's work and the light environment and maybe an average person's experience and put it through that filter that you're saying, the understanding of it, knowing what to remove, what to add in. So if they are not currently living a circadian lifestyle, if they're not currently eating the right foods, they're not currently sleeping properly, you know, ultimately, right, an average person, if we talk the top 5 things that they need to do, where do they need to start? What's going to move the needle the most? 1 through.
Okay, so those are two different questions, I'd say.
Fair.
Let's address the first one. And I have said in the past that the formula to health is understand, eliminate, and then add and replace. If these people aren't doing certain things, it's because of 2 reasons. One, they don't know that something is important. That's one. And 2, they know about it, but they don't think it's important. Once I realized that sunrise was really, really important, I stopped missing it. That's really the case. Once I understood that there's near infrared outside, but not inside, I started spending more time outside. Once I understood how that affects the body, I realized the importance as well, because I could connect it to that, connect it to the mitochondria. Once I understood the role that mitochondria play in the disease, again, that became even more important in my work. So that influenced my actions. So actually, it all starts with understanding. So you have to learn about these things. And the reason why people believe food is more important is because they don't understand what light does. People have to be honest with themselves. Do I have any idea about how the circadian system of man works? Do I have any idea where the suprachiasmatic nucleus is? Do I have any idea about what the hypothalamus does? Do I have any idea about the circadian hormones? What's controlled by what? Do I have any idea of what happens to the body when I see a screen that's emitting blue light at 10 p.m. when it's completely dark outside? If not, then you can't say that food is more important. because you don't have the full picture. Once you have the full picture, then you can make conclusions. So, okay, so then how do you fix the understanding part? You watch stuff like this. You watch a bunch of Jack Cruz podcasts. Again, how did I learn about Jack's stuff? I listened to him. I listened and listened and listened, and he said, okay, blogs, okay, let me read the blogs. Books, okay, let me read books. And I connected it to what I already know. And again, that influenced my actions. So people need to listen to a bunch of the stuff. They need to look up the stuff that they don't know about. And that will influence their actions. All actions flow from understanding. You need to gain understanding. What's the purpose of this podcast or my channel, etc.? People now understand stuff, and so they can take action upon it. That's the most important part, learning. That's one. And then also, you have to be health conscious. You have to see the value of health in general in your life. And that is the motivation behind understanding. And that usually comes from someone having health problems. In any case, in terms of the top 5 things, it's hard to... I don't view things that way. The way I view it is, if something is important, I have to do it. That's how it is. So if I've split things up into health pillars. And I mean, I can name a few. Light, you've got EMF, although that's all the electromagnetic spectrum, really. Even food, the nutrition health pillar, that's also the electromagnetic spectrum. But you can say light, EMF, nutrition, breathing, movement and posture, hydration, yield, so quantum yield, that's a health pillar as well. And then, let's see, pollution, that's another one. And then there are a few more, probably. The internal state as well. That one's very important. So how your mind is affecting, what's happening in your body, etc. Because you can kill yourself by thinking. Again, if you stress yourself out too much, you might have a heart attack and die. So the internal state is very important, because you can do everything perfectly, but if you're constantly stressed because of what your mind is doing, your cortisol will be elevated constantly. Good luck sleeping. That's all I have to say. But so I split things up into those health pillars. I think I have more, but those are a large part of what it is. And then you do your best to satisfy everything that you need to do within all of those. So if it's light, okay, make the sun your primary light source. Wake up with the sun, go to sleep with the sun. So that would be light. But then you have a bunch of details there. Okay, in our modern environment, we have Windows. Okay, what do Windows block? Well, I believe it's 700 to 2000 nanometers. Is that light really important? Is that IR at near infrared really important? Yes, it is. And you need to know that if you open up a window, now you're getting 700 to 2000, at least a little bit more. And your mitochondria are sensing that. Every single mitochondria in your body is sensing that. And it greatly improves cognition. And so would I have the same, let's say, a mental capacity if I had closed this window that is next to me? No, because I wouldn't be getting that light. And so that's something that's in the, let's say, again, the light health pillar. And so if that's important, then you do it. You absolutely do it. And then cold is also a part of that health pillar. So, okay, you know that when you do cold exposure, you emit UV, create melanin. That's how you run the programs that are usually run by the sun during the summer, at higher latitudes during the winter. Okay, well, then I have to do that. Then you have to do that. And then in terms of nutrition, if I know that seed oils are really high in deuterium, well, then don't eat seed oils. Now, I need to make sure that I don't do that. In terms of pollution, let's say I'm a smoker or I drink alcohol. Well, that's pollution in my world. Any junk food is pollution. But it falls under the nutrition. You could say that nutrition and pollution sort of go together almost in some ways, or they overlap. And so, okay, you smoke, you drink alcohol, well, you have to stop that. Eliminate that. It's as simple as that. Okay, let's say you're dark-skinned, but you're at the 60th latitude. Let's say you're in Helsinki. You have to fix that. So, but that's hard to fix. That goes under the quantum yield health pillar, because you're getting less energy from the environment than you're built for. So you're going to suffer up there. You can never be healthy up there. It's absolutely impossible. And this is especially if you're, let's say, of African origin or African ancestry, actually. So then you orient your life around being able to relocate. Now, once you do that, once you make a list of the things you have to do to actually make this happen in your life, you, again, look at each thing in the list and you see how you can fulfill that. You make a plan for each one. And once you break it down, you'll see that it's actually doable. And then you do it. So that would be how to deal with yield, for example. you have to do that to be healthy, and so you make sure you do that. So it's not a list for me. It's just, okay, I have to do this. This is important in terms of health. Let me do that. And you could call this, I mean, for me, I want what's the absolute best in every single aspect of life. And so I don't really compromise. I don't say top five. I put everything on equal grounds, because if I'm missing anything, then I'm not optimal.
I appreciate that. I really, your response to that was so perfect. The question was from the top of my mind, admittedly, and kind of guided by what we know we see out there in the different videos, what people think they're looking for. But you couldn't have answered that better. And I really appreciate just the way your brain works, the way you see this information and you provide it to people. You have a unique approach that I really pray people can grasp and start to kind of adopt that, I guess. There's always going to be this, I think it's a programming thing where people give resistance, they give excuses, they explain why, well, that worked for you, but it can't work for me. And I'm on my journey where I guess I'm shifting much closer to where your mind is at. Like, as I learn, well, guess what? This thing is what I need to do. I haven't been doing it, and the results I've received were a direct result of what the fact that I wasn't doing it. So if I want better, I need to do better, and I need to make that change. Stop making excuses and just make the change. And I've been making those changes for quite some time now, to be honest. But this will be a great opportunity to share what I alluded to before. A little over a year ago, I was diagnosed with a tumor on my left kidney. And interestingly, when I got that diagnosis, I had this sense of pure peace and calm. I felt a palpable rush of energy from my feet all the way through my body. I could feel this rush through, and I smiled. I told the doctor, I said, Doc, I'm not going to be your average patient. I said, I'm not doing any standard of care treatment. And I actually told him, and I believe this wholeheartedly to this day, I believe I manifested that. And I look back through a lens of recognizing that the life that I led in the past, the life that I led as a little boy and into my late teens, 20s, and even early 30s was very consistent with creating an environment in my body that a tumor could exist in. So it comes as no surprise, and I don't feel like a victim. I recognize the role that I played. But I had already made some pretty dramatic changes since well before the diagnosis ever came. So I knew in that moment my body already is a different environment, and it's continuing every day to become an even better environment, a cleaner environment, an environment that a tumor cannot exist in. And it's very much in line with everything you just alluded to. Like, you just discover, okay, this environment is conducive to a tumor. This one is not. What is it that you need to change to make that environment that it is not conducive? And that's what I've been doing. Total circadian lifestyle, everything I learned nutritionally speaking that I can make the change, I make the change. I gave up alcohol almost 3 years ago. I've been working on my own relationship with myself. You talked about kind of that on the inside, what are you? I believe mindset drives so much of this, and your belief system drives so much of this. I used to have such a level of insecurity and negative self-talk and all those things. So that really does get us to move into this direction. And the reason I believe I manifested it and the reason I view this as a true gift is because I now in real time in practicing all of the things that I talk about on this channel with people such as yourself, and I'm feeling the shift in my body. I don't feel sick. I haven't felt sick. I would say since the diagnosis, there have probably been 3 to 5 times where I felt less than 100% and it wasn't exactly fun. But I can easily trace those feelings back to some things that I had done that led to the symptoms I felt. And I also had the interpretation that this is my immune system doing its job of working to get these things out of me. So a little bit of a segue there and just dumping some info on you, but I guess I'll get your reaction to that, and then we can go a little deeper into some of the changes that I've made and what moves the needle.
Yeah, I mean, there were two things I was thinking about. I forgot the first one. The second one is that, yeah, I mean, in terms of environments, I tell my parents constantly. I think my sister is pre-diabetic. She's sort of the opposite of me. She's inside all the time, doesn't see the sun, and on technology the whole day. And she's autistic, unfortunately. So, I mean, again, and her and my mother's circadian rhythms are completely thrown off. And so I'm actually seeing neurodegeneration in my mother, the beginning stages. Her brain isn't working as well at all. She's forgetting things left and right, and her mood isn't as good. And yeah, you might say, okay, that's sad. But to me, it actually doesn't come as a surprise at all. I already knew this was going to happen. And I've already told her what she needs to do to prevent this, and I can't do more than what I've already done, unfortunately. So I mean
Yes,
that's
sir.
that. And then with my sister again, I know exactly why she has the cognitive capacity that she currently has and what the potential is. I mean, again, you put her in Costa Rica and you feed her a bunch of DHA. Yeah, she's gonna get way better. She's gonna actually start speaking sentence after sentence. Like currently, she doesn't do that. She can't, have a coherent conversation. You could say. So in terms of environments, yeah, you can, once you learn all this stuff, it's very obvious why people have the issues that they have. And I think that would be the amazing thing about having access to Jack's brain, because he can look at literally anyone with any issue and know exactly why it arises.
Yes.
And so that's one. And then what was the other thing? Yeah, I think another thing I thought about was that in your case, for example, I think you should move down to a lower latitude. Honestly, I think you'd really feel, at least just give it 1 to 3 weeks, sort of, in Central America.
Yeah.
You'd immediately feel the upgrade. Trust me, because the sun there is just so good. And then again, you're not. Are you sort of in New York, close to New York City, or just in New York State?
About an hour and a half north of the city.
Okay, so I don't know if Jack says that the entire state is completely messed up or if it's just the New York City area, but
Right.
whenever you can get out of there, fix the yield
Yeah,
health
no,
alert.
absolutely.
Yeah,
You're
that's
absolutely
something I
right.
will
He
highly recommend.
says, yeah, and I'm with you. So I'm from New Hampshire originally. I've lived in New York for 20 years. This is where my wife is from. We're raising our family here. It is not beyond the scope of reality for us that in time we will move out of here. I can see a reality where that happens for sure. And I know Jack talks specifically with regards to autism rates and how New Jersey and California are by far the highest. And those places, like, you just got to get out of there. So for sure, I'm certain New York City is up there as well, whether we're talking specifically to autism or other issues, just because there's nothing natural about it. Good luck finding a stretch that you can walk barefoot and touch the actual ground and not pavement that's full of synthetic materials. I do absolutely, you're right. I can see that moving to a lower latitude could for sure continue to improve. I think the lens that I see it all through is as much as helping my body heal. I already have a very strong conviction that I already see my body healed. I already know it is happening. It's done in a very near future. But as I make the changes, I do so through a lens of sharing my story to people and trying to make it things that they can feel they can relate to, they can actually do. I don't want it to be, and maybe this is just being too sensitive to it all, because I kind of appreciate your kind of, there's just a hard line. Like on this side of it, you have disease. On that side of it, you have optimal health. Make your choice. But if there's small steps that we can make, if we talk about the deliberate cold exposure, when I first got my Morosco, I was getting in it at 50 degrees because I know other people would be more apt to get in at 50 degrees versus the 34 that I've got it set to now. But recognizing that for my case, increasing my brown fat and really giving my body more of that challenge. I spoke with Dr. Seeger about this. He said, Jeffrey, listen, 50 is good for somebody who's already pretty healthy. And, to look at me, people think I'm healthy, but we understand the diagnosis occurred. So that to resolve this diagnosis, we need to go a little more extreme. So we're at 34, and that's what I'm doing. So I think it's through that lens that I see it. I want it to be something that lowers the barrier to entry for people and gets more people to make the necessary changes. When it's to the point, as much as what you just touched upon is 100% right, what Jack talks about is absolutely right. I just know that the majority of people are going to hear it and their guard goes up. They stop listening and they're out. And I want to pull those people back in to the best of my ability. So trying to make some changes that I feel people can make.
For me, I mean, it's about, I'd say, The yield thing is related to two things, really. I say it in two scenarios. If someone clearly has dark skin and they're in Scotland or Sweden, Norway, Finland, etc., yeah, I'm gonna tell them that, yeah, if you're gonna be optimally healthy, you need to lower your latitude. That is an absolute necessity. That's one. Two, if there's so much, or not, well, it depends. It really depends on the situation. But if they already have some problem, like that you really would want someone to be at a lower latitude to fix, yeah, they need to lower the latitude as well. But those are in more heavy cases, let's say. And I tell everybody, like, if you have the opportunity, because people need to have this knowledge, if you have the opportunity to go to a lower latitude, go to a lower latitude, because you'll fix it far more easily there. And I mean, community members who have gone down to lower latitudes for a while and come back, they've told me, oh yeah, all my symptoms resolved. I didn't even change my diet, just all my symptoms resolved. That's it. And then I came back, and then they came back. So it's a very, very important thing. It's one of the biggest things you can do to move the needle, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, it's there's no arguing with it. The data's there, it supports it, people are experiencing it, so it's for sure what we see.
And by the
You
way,
know, it's
in terms of the kidneys, I just wanted to tell the viewer that basically the kidney is there because the mitochondria and the kidney were broken. And so then you do cold exposure and you're sort of restoring mitochondrial function there. So that's why it would help, because those mitochondria are not producing light in the UV range. They're producing light in the high ranges, and they're also, again, they're completely dysfunctional. Signaling theirs is not correct. And so you do cold exposure and you restore their function. And that's why the tumor goes away.
Yep. And I love that explanation. You're absolutely right. And that's why I think I've shared this already on the channel. Maybe I haven't. I've spoken to plenty of people in person about it. But as I alluded to already, I have my Morozco, and it was gifted to me by Dr. Seeger and the company because I'm actively a part of a case study with them. And we both already know I got the opportunity to meet him in person recently. I was at a retreat down in Franklin, Tennessee called Return to Nature. It was hosted by Oksana Hansen and Carrie Bennett, which was a truly life-changing experience. And meeting these people there, I've had so many of them on the podcast already, but Oksana, Carrie, Dr. Seeger, Dr. Kelsey Dexter, Sarah Pugh, so many of these people. But having the opportunity to speak with Dr. Seeger there and talk about it, I mean, you just hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what's going on. It's about essentially giving the mitochondria the stimulus that they need, increasing your brown fat. And, you know, as Dr. Thomas Seyfried goes down a little bit more of the metabolic side of it, but we know cancers and tumors are fed by the Warburg metabolism. So if we can have this brown fat, we can make the mitochondria more efficient and at the same time be a little more on the low carb side of things. We're starving their fuel at the same time as we're making the mitochondria stronger, as you said.
Exactly. You have to restore the TCA cycle, and once that happens, yeah, you won't have uncontrolled cell division. Because again, the light that the mitochondria emit, that controls mitosis. UV controls mitosis. And so that's why Jack Kruse says that if you wear sunglasses, yeah, your risk of getting a certain disease, let's say that's related to being Warburg shifted, you have to be a little bit
right.
from YouTube.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that increases a lot. Because you're changing
Yes,
if
sir.
you put on sunglasses, you're changing the light that every single cell in your body is emitting.
And you know, I'm glad you brought that up too. It's so funny. I feel like we could talk for hours, but the number of clients that I've been able to share that information with, and I've made a shift. I mean, for sure, a younger version of me was led to believe that we needed UV protection in our sunglasses, and it was so vital. And then it's all about style too. So I wanted to look cool, and at any given moment, I had 10 to 20 pairs of sunglasses, and they had to go with certain outfits and look a certain way. But being at a point now where my glasses, I've got the Viva Rays I'm wearing right now. I've got these on indoors to the yellow lens will harmonize the blue light. The amber and red lens will block it. And when I get outside, the hat comes off, the glasses come off, my shirt comes off. I'm exposing myself to as much of the sun as I can. I walk around barefoot every opportunity I can. I'm out touching my bare feet in the grass and just everything with that. The sensitivity that our eyes have to the sun when we're used to blocking it, it goes away really, really quick when we slowly start to expose our eyes to that light, preferably starting at daybreak, at sunrise, UVA rise, and so on. And like exercise, we build up this tolerance. We have that adaptation, and the body can handle it. So I've got a client that's 91 years old who was getting frequent migraines and came in every time with her glasses or sunglasses on. And I, just through explaining to her all that stuff, I didn't tell her take those things off. But now she's been coming in for the past couple of months, no glasses, her eyes aren't as sensitive, and she gets far fewer migraines. There's no coincidence
there. There you go.
Yeah, amen. I make it a point too to say she's 91, right?
Exactly.
So when we think about that, you've got so many people who in their 30s, they feel they're too old to do things. But my oldest client's 92, then I've got my 91-year-old. They're consistently improving. And, you know, my day-to-day here in the clinic, I'm a massage therapist. So just the hands-on, there's plenty of benefit from that quantum space. And I've got my feet on my earthing mat. I've got my red lights in here. I'm trying to provide as much as I can in here through, as you allude to, this quantum yield, that whatever I can control in this room, I'm going to do it. But then as soon as we're done, I say, okay, get back outside, go get the light, go do some grounding, and give your body all the.
Do you know how old Professor Michael Crawford is?
I don't.
95.
That's awesome. God bless him.
And his mind is again, his mind is a testament to his work. Again, he's been researching DHA for, I believe, 53 years. So he began when my parents were 3 years old. And his mind is still amazing at this age. I mean, he's throwing out, very detailed scientific explanations of what DHA is doing, and evolutionary biology and studies. And again, his mind is working perfectly at this age.
That's amazing. He's clearly, by living that lifestyle and functioning as well as he is, and as Jack talks about all the time, he's focusing on the mitochondria up here as opposed to the mitochondria in here, right? He's not worried about bodybuilding and having these big muscles. And I tell you, keeping an eye on the clock, I don't want to keep you forever, but I listened to, I think you just posted it. You talk about a desirable, optimal body fat range, and you talk about some Aboriginal tribes and how the women are carrying a little more body fat and how it's so much healthier. So with me just kind of hinting at the bodybuilding and this vision that we've got of what optimal health is and big muscles and low body fat, that's really driving, especially considering those people are building those muscles under this soup of non-native EMFs and artificial light and the flicker with fluorescent bulbs and all that. If you could unpack that a little bit, just how harmful it is when we have these massive, massive muscles with mitochondria that is not functioning optimally, and what that's doing to the brain, and why having a higher body fat percentage, especially for women, is so.
Well, fat signals that you can survive a pregnancy, that you're not starving. So female athletes will lose their menstrual cycle because, again, there's not enough fat, and so there's not enough for the baby. You won't survive the winter, woman. And so no baby for you, no menstrual cycle. Why waste the eggs? So that's the explanation to that. And so women, again, need to have a higher body fat percentage. And what we see is that a BMI between, well, if this data is correct, between 25 and 30 is optimal in terms of female fertility. But that's, again, from one study, so take it with a grain of salt. So that's one. The second, the reason why it's outstandingly important to be moving outside and never to exert yourself inside is because of near-infrared. I'd say that's the main thing. Or actually, it's just because of light in general. But we can sort of tie this into near-infrared. So, because that's the part of the spectrum that's most prevalent from the sun. Again, it's 42% of the sun's light. Your mitochondria, they sort of have, you can imagine them as the engine. Now, the light, the near-infrared, is like the oil in the car. If you have no oil in there, and you rev the car, yeah, not a good idea. You need to have oil in there. The light is helping electron flow. The light is helping the electrons flow from one complex to the other, and that is what drives, again, this gradient across the inner mitochondrial membrane to create, again, ATP from the ATP synthesis, etc. And also light emission, etc. It's vitally important for the mitochondria to function because they're not just producing ATP, of course. So now you put us in, let's say, under LEDs. and you have windows everywhere, and let's say it's dark, what you're gonna have is only visible light, really, based on what I understand. And so the light frequencies that lubricate the mitochondria will not be there. And what are you doing in the gym? You're working out, and so you're making the mitochondrial work while there's no oil in the engine. And so that's a very good way of messing them up very quick. Now, another thing that Jack says that I learned from him, of course, is that what's it called? Now, what was it? Now I'm forgetting. No.
It'll come to you.
What is it? No, this is an important point. I have to remember. Yeah, it's the mTOR. It's about the mTOR. So mTOR rises when you eat, of course. Now, what does blue light do? Blue light increases cortisol and insulin. And so these things signal for growth. So if you're working out in that environment, that light is acting as steroids. And so your muscles would not become as big outside as when you're inside. And so they're becoming excessively big because they're getting the wrong signal, or your body's getting the wrong signal. And so you're basically becoming myostatin deficient, or you're creating something that is sort of equivalent with myostatin deficiency. What happens when your muscles are big is you're building many mitochondria in the muscles, many cells, again, more cells in general, and your regenerative capacity is going toward the muscles instead of the brain and the heart. So the brain and the heart, they have mitochondria that need to be repaired. Your regenerative power needs to go toward taking care of the mitochondria in the heart and the brain. Now, if they're going toward the muscles instead, they will not go to the heart and the brain. So you'll have quicker neurodegeneration and you'll have heart problems. And what usually happens to these bodybuilders? They get heart issues. You see a stroke, or stroke isn't necessarily, well, that stroke is a brain issue. So neurodegeneration again, brain problems, and then heart problems. That's what you see with them. And that's usually what kills modern humans. And when you look at people who live long lives, they're usually not very buff. And then lastly, if you want to know how humans actually look at many different tribes in nature. You never see anyone who looks like a bodybuilder who's very buff. Even if they're a natural bodybuilder, you never see anyone that looks like that. They look like they have a very natural, good body composition. That's all. Women usually more on the robust side, but they can also be thin. And then men, decent amount of muscle mass. They look very healthy. They look very male. Again, developed chest, shoulders, back looks good, but it's not overdeveloped whatsoever. And then again, the posture is really good, and eyes are clear, skin is clear, hair is thick. Those are a few other details.
So true. And I mean, even to take that further, developed jaws, their teeth structure is quite good. There's so many different variables there. But I will point out, it's interesting to me listening to you describe that, how the light environment in the gym has essentially a steroid response to the body. Plenty of people are going to hear that and say, excellent, all the more reason for me to stay inside the gym and keep doing it, because I know so many people taking steroids as it is, and that's what they're looking for. But I will really pray that it goes back to your point from earlier, that it's just because they don't have a thorough enough understanding of just how harmful that can be. When we know, at least here in the States, the first two leading causes of death for the longest time I can think of, heart disease and cancer too, but heart and brain disorders, you're talking Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, all these different things that, if you're too busy over here building up the mitochondria in your skeletal muscle and making your body look a certain way, but your heart and brain aren't optimal, what's the point? What are we doing this for?
And just to link this, bodybuilders often take insulin. So insulin, again, is anabolic. So again, the blue light, you create a clip. You cleave the palm C, you get clip, again, and that releases insulin. And so you're getting, instead of injecting it, you're just getting it from the light above you. And so, if someone wants to use that to get buff, now they know. But based on what we've talked about, if you don't want to die of a heart attack or become really stupid, you should probably cancel your gym membership. And now I actually remembered, in 2020, after I had listened to Jack, that's when I started looking at the gym a bit differently. And I noticed one day especially, there's a specific room that's for lifters. Like there's this fluff outside, and then there was this room where you had the racks, the barbells, etc. That's where I would spend most of my time, of course. And so one day the lights were off in that room, and I felt a lot better in there, even though it was dark. But I felt a lot better, and I realized how these lights were very annoying. And so I thought, okay, well, the outside gym is free. I'm outside, fresh air, no chemical smell. Why don't I go there? So I canceled my gym membership. So I have him to thank for that back in 2020.
That's awesome.
Now I have a lot more to thank him for.
Yeah. Oh, amen to that. Yeah, especially, I mean, as I said before, I don't think I can say it enough, but your ability to take in that information and process it and apply it, I mean, it's far superior to that of most people. So hopefully they can continue to listen to what you have to offer and interpret it and benefit from it as well. This has been awesome. I'm really grateful for you. And I could definitively talk to you for hours, and we will absolutely, as long as you're open for it, we'll have you back for a second round at some point. But we're closing in on that time that we'll start to wrap it up. And I'll ask you if people that are listening are saying, wait a minute, this kid's got so much. I know Excellent Health Podcast, YouTube channel, your website is Excellently Healthy. Is that right? .com?
Yeah, excellentlyhealthy.com, but I'd say that the best place actually nowadays is the community. Like begin with the YouTube
Okay.
channel. Begin with the YouTube
Yep.
channel. Get all the free stuff. Master that. And then, once you want more stuff, calls, posts, stuff of exclusive videos, all that stuff. Yeah, go to the community.
Excellent. And how do they access that? Is that through the website?
But yeah, they can just go to any of my recent videos. No, not through the website. That's more for consultations. They just go to any of my videos, and then it's the first link in the description, really.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I'll be checking that out myself because you are absolutely a wealth of knowledge. I appreciate it, my friend. And I'm really grateful you took this time out. And I look forward to next time as well.
I'm very grateful for
audience,
your
if you haven't
invitation.
already, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I am very grateful for your invitation.
Of course. Truly, it means a lot to me, man. Audience, if you haven't already, you know the drill. Subscribe, like, comment, share, all that stuff. And definitely go over and check out Excellent Health. Subscribe to his channel and just take it all in. You've got some wonderful stuff there. And I look forward to what you continue to create in the future. Till next time, audience, have a blessed day. And Jones, thanks so much.
Thank you.